This morning, the final preparations are being made for an all-out assault on ISIS's last stronghold in Iraq. Coalition troops are massing on the outskirts of Mosul, backed by powerful American air power and artillery. It could be a critical turning point in the war against the terror group, but it could also unleash a new wave of chaos in Iraq and beyond. No one knows that potential for chaos better than General David Petraeus, who commanded U.S. forces in Iraq and drove out ISIS's predecessor, al-Qaeda, in Iraq. General David Petraeus joins us now. Great to have you here this morning.
Good to be with you.
We have spent many years in Mosul, from early in the war, throughout the war. It must be so painful for you to even watch what has gone on there for the last 2.5 years. But the effort to take back Mosul is imminent. What will that look like, and what are the complications in holding it?
Well, it's going to be orders of magnitude larger than any fight that the Iraqis, with our assistance and the coalition support, have taken on. There will be a ring of fire. They've already lit it, supposedly. There will be dug-in troops. There will be tunnels. There will be suicide bombers, improvised explosive devices. But at the end of the day, the Iraqi forces, with our assistance, are going to prevail. There's no question. The Islamic State fighters in Mosul are dead men walking, and I think they increasingly know it. They're even trying to desert, and they're being executed. So there's no question about the outcome of the fight. The challenge here is actually after the fight. It's governance. Can a government be established that is representative of and responsive to the most complex human terrain in all of Iraq? That's Nainawa province, for which Mosul is the capital. That is a huge challenge, and that will determine the outcome here.
And you've got, just to go back to the battle, this is an urban area. This is an urban fight. You've got 2 million people inside. I don't think people realize how difficult that is and how different it is from just a conventional battle.
No, again, fighting in cities is a totally different endeavor than obviously fighting out in the open, and that it has all kinds of inherent difficulties. And indeed, there have been 2 years of preparation that's gone on here to make this as difficult as possible. But with our drones, with our precision strike, our intelligence fusion, our advice, assistance, and Iraqis who are increasingly experienced fighting on the ground, again, the outcome's not in question. The question is what happens afterward. There are a lot of grievances. There are Sunni Arabs, Shia Arabs, Turkmen. There are Kurds from 3 different political parties, Yazidis, Christians, Shabak, a lot of grievances, scores that may be settled. And in that kind of complexity, governance is going to have to emerge, or else you'll start preparing fields for the planting of the seeds of Islamic State 3.0. And by the way, the real fight is in Baghdad, where the Prime Minister is focusing the attention of the country on Mosul, while a coalition is arrayed against him that has taken down, through votes of no confidence, his Minister of Defense and Minister of Foreign Affairs.
As far as the Americans, the U.S. presence in Iraq, we have about 5,000 or more troops there now. Would you advocate for them staying there or even increasing that number over the next few years?
Well, I'd advocate listening to now Lieutenant General Steve Townsend, very experienced commander, was on the ground during the surge as a brigade commander, knows Mosul. He fought there as well as in Baghdad and elsewhere. And again, he has authorities that he needs right now. He has not been hesitant, as I understand it, to express need for additional capabilities when that's necessary. But we want the Iraqis to do the fighting. We need a comprehensive campaign without question, but we don't need to do all of it. And indeed, I'm actually somewhat in awe of what has been done here, because this is a new way of fighting. And what's important about it is that it's much more sustainable in terms of blood and treasure than obviously having our forces have to do it.
And let's look ahead to Syria. That's a real problem. We don't have a lot of ground troops there. We have Aleppo, we have Assad. We all watched that tragedy. When you look at Assad, what should be done about Assad? What should be done about Aleppo?
Well, in the bigger picture,
remembering that these are Russian-backed.
They are. The complexity there is even orders of magnitude more than that in Iraq, as challenging as that is. You have many different fights going on. We're trying to fight and defeat the Islamic State and other al-Qaeda affiliates. Many of the Sunni Arabs want to fight Bashar al-Assad, Sunnis that we're supporting. You now have Russia, Lebanese Hezbollah, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps Quds Force propping up Bashar al-Assad and really changing the battlefield. The issue here is that, as it's often said, that there is no military solution to the challenges of Syria.
So let's use your phrase. Tell me how this ends.
Well, I'm not sure that Putin and Bashar al-Assad got that memo, because they seem to think that they can indeed have a military solution, and they're trying to do that to 275,000 people trapped in Aleppo right now, as an example. And you may buy that there's no military solution, but absolutely, if you do not change the military context on that battlefield, there's not going to be any meaningful diplomacy. And that's the situation we're in now. There are talks. My hat is off absolutely to Secretary Kerry and his indefatigable efforts. But unless you change that context, you're not going to see results. And the way to change the context is to give additional weapons, to give anti-tank guided missiles, and indeed some anti-aircraft missiles to the opposition. If you want, send Arab special forces with them to make sure they're shot at those fighters, not at civilian aircraft or what have you. A safe zone. Turkey has declared one. We had a no-fly zone for over a decade to protect the Kurds in northern Iraq and the Marsh Arabs, the Shia in southern Iraq. Again, I think it is time that we undertake these without being absolutely provocative in what we do to Russia.
And I want to talk about Russia. Where are we with Russia? What is Putin up to?
Well, I think Putin really wants to recreate as much of the Soviet Union as he possibly can through a variety of different means. He's invaded parts of Georgia, took Crimea, southeastern Ukraine, bases in other countries.
Are we in danger of a conflict with Russia?
Well, I think we have to show, and again, in a skillful way, not provocative, but we have to show a degree of firmness that is going to be unmistakable to him. And by the way, in cyberspace as well, but certainly in Ukraine. Certainly, and NATO has taken steps to do this, for example, with positioning forces in the Baltic states and eastern Poland. But that's what's going to have to be demonstrated, in addition to the other tools, sanctions, continuing those, deepening those, and so on.
And we have about 20 seconds left, but I want to get to Yemen, where the Houthi rebels have been firing on U.S. ships in the Red Sea.
Big threat to a strategic maritime artery of the global economy. Look, with respect to Yemen, we have to distinguish between flawed friends and adversaries. Saudi Arabia is a flawed friend, but they are taking the fight to Iranian-backed Houthis who are trying to get at the point of a gun what they could not get at the political tables in the capital of Yemen. And again, they made a big mistake. They have acknowledged it this past week. But we have got to look at how we could help them more, both to avoid those kind of mistakes and indeed to ensure the freedom of navigation through a very, very important strait.
Thanks so much for talking to us this morning, and please come back again.